The Vatican is a tiny, independent city-state located inside of Rome, serving as the headquarters of the Roman Catholic Church and the home of the Pope. It holds huge religious and historical importance, acting as the spiritual center for over 1 billion Catholics worldwide. Beyond its spiritual role, it's also a hub of global influence, diplomacy, and centuries-old traditions wrapped in secrecy and power. So, these are 25 of the Vatican's darkest conspiracy theories. The Vatican Secret Archives. The Vatican Secret Archives conspiracy is the idea that the Vatican is sitting on a massive underground library of hidden documents that could rewrite human history, and that they have kept it locked away from the world on purpose. The official name of this archive is called the Vatican Apostolic Archive, and it is said to hold over 50 miles of shelving with millions of papers, letters, and books collected by the Catholic Church for centuries. Now, the conspiracy says that inside those shelves, there are documents that would expose huge secrets about religion, world governments, science, and even life beyond Earth. So the first part of this theory is about Jesus. Now, it says that the archives have early writings from the time of Jesus that tell a very different story than the Bible. For example, maybe Jesus was more political, or maybe he survived the crucifixion, or maybe he even had a family. And the idea is that the church keeps this locked away because it would destroy the church's power if the public ever saw it. Now, the next part is about proof of the supernatural. Now, people say that the archives store detailed records of miracles, demon encounters, and physical evidence of angels. And not just stories, but reports and drawings and maybe even objects like, cursed or holy items taken from exorcisms. Then there's also the secret history angle. Basically, the theory says that the Vatican collected letters from popes, kings, and rulers planning wars, assassinations, and financial deals. So basically, blackmail material on every empire in Europe. And that would explain how the Vatican stayed powerful for so long, even without, a huge army. And then, of course, there's the alien angle. I mean, some people claim that the archives hold proof that the church has known about extraterrestrial life for a long, long time. The lost books of the Bible. Now, the Vatican lost books of the Bible conspiracy is the idea that the Catholic Church has secret ancient writings about Jesus, early Christianity, and the origin of humanity, and that these writings were removed from the official Bible on purpose. The basic claim is that a long time ago, there were many more gospels and texts than what we see in the Bible today, and that powerful church leaders decided which books the public was allowed to see and which ones were locked away. The theory says that there are banned gospels where Jesus talks in a more direct and personal way. For example, some of these books could describe Jesus giving hidden knowledge to certain followers in private, like secret instructions on how the soul works and what happens after death. There's also the idea that some of these missing books show Jesus in a more human way. So not only are they showing him as this, divine being, but also an emotional and close and possibly even having a normal personal life and normal relationships. And that includes the claim that the church removed any text that hinted Jesus may have had a wife or children, or that someone like Mary Magdalene had higher status than people were later told. Now, the claim is that by choosing which books stayed in the Bible and hiding the rest, the church could shape what people believe about sin, about who has authority, and about how salvation works. And then the final layer is that these missing books were not destroyed or are not destroyed, that they are hidden in the Vatican, kept in secret archives, and only a small group of people is allowed to actually read them. The third secret of Fatima. Now, the third secret of Fatima conspiracy starts in 1917 in a place called Fatima, Portugal. Now, 3 children said that they were visited several times by the Virgin Mary. During these visits, they said they were given 3 secrets. The first 2 were revealed early on, and the third one was written down by one of the children years later. They sealed it, and they sent it to the Vatican, and that is where the mystery comes from. Now, the theory says that the third secret is not just a message about faith. It is a warning about the end of the world. People say that the secret talks about huge global chaos, like cities being destroyed by fire from the sky, oceans flooding the land, a massive war, and a huge number of people dying in a very short time. The theory also says that the secret gives a timeline for these events, or at least connects them to certain world leaders and major world systems. The claim is that the Vatican read the secret, saw how extreme it was, and decided that normal people could not handle it. So instead of, releasing the full secret, the church is said to have given out a safe version, something that sounds serious but not world-ending, and they just kept that, the real version just completely hidden. There's also a part of the theory that says that the secret talks about corruption inside of the church. It's said that the secret says that there will be a point where dark forces enter the church, they twist it, and they lead people away from the real message of God. Basically a takeover from inside of the church. And the last piece that gets talked about is that this secret includes a warning about a powerful figure who rises during a time of global fear, gains influence fast, and then pushes the world towards spiritual collapse. The third secret is almost like a classified file from heaven stored in the Vatican about apocalypse, about corruption, and about the fall of humanity. The Vatican bank scandals. The Vatican bank scandals conspiracy is that the Vatican runs a secret global money machine that looks holy from the outside, but is actually being used for criminal stuff behind the scenes. So as most of you probably know or don't know, the Vatican has its own bank. Now the formal name is the Institute for Works of Religion. The public story is that the bank is supposed to handle money for religious missions and charity work. The conspiracy claim is that the bank is actually used to move huge amounts of money quietly with no questions asked for powerful people, groups, and governments. The idea is that the Vatican bank became a kind of safe zone for dirty money. Since the Vatican is its own country and has its own rules, in theory, people could move money through accounts there and get it out clean. There's also the idea of blackmail, and the theory says that the bank keeps records and really detailed records of who moved what and where it went, and they use that as leverage. Another part of the conspiracy connects the money to death. Some versions say that key insiders who knew too much about where the money was going either vanished or turned up dead in very, very suspicious ways. So basically the claim is that the Vatican bank is not just a bank. It is a hidden financial weapon that secretly funds operations, protects criminals, and controls powerful people. The Vatican and Nazi gold. Now, the Vatican and the Nazi gold conspiracy is the claim that during and after World War II, the Vatican helped hide and move stolen gold and wealth taken by the Nazis. So now during World War II, the Nazi government in Germany took huge amounts of gold, cash, jewelry, artwork, and valuables from the countries that they invaded, and also from Jewish families and other targeted groups. The theory says that not all of that stolen wealth was recovered after the war. Some of it was secretly moved through church channels, mainly using Vatican connections and Vatican banking networks. Now, the important part to understand here is that the Vatican is its own independent state inside of Rome. Like we just talked about, it has its own bank, it has its own diplomats, and it even has its own vaults. And the theory says that this made the Vatican the perfect place to move Nazi assets quietly, since normal police and normal governments could not easily get in there or see what was being moved. One major claim is that high-ranking Catholic officials gave protection to certain Nazi officers, and in return, those officers gave the church access to stolen gold. So the idea is that the church helped the Nazis escape Europe after the war, and part of that deal included secretly moving or cleaning their money. Now, another part of the conspiracy is that the gold was not just stored, it was used. It was, sent through different accounts in places like Switzerland and Argentina and Spain, and they turned it basically into funding for post-war political operations. So it's said that the gold was used to build influence in new governments, fight the spread of communism, and support certain leaders that the church preferred. This conspiracy says that the Vatican acted like a quiet banker for Nazi wealth, then used that money for its own long-term power and for shaping what Europe would look like after the war. Freemasonry within the church. Now, this conspiracy is the idea that Freemasons secretly got inside the highest levels of the Catholic Church and started guiding decisions from the inside. Now, if you guys don't know, Freemasonry, which, are sometimes often called the Masons, it is a worldwide brotherhood, or I guess a secret society. And the conspiracy theory around Freemasonry is about hidden control, world banking, and plans for a new world order. The claim here is that important bishops, cardinals, and even popes were secretly a part of the Freemasons. Like, the church has a public mission, which is, spiritual, but inside that structure, there is said to be a hidden network that is loyal not to God, but to Freemasonry. And these members act together quietly, to steer the church in a new direction. The goal of that network is long-term control. And the first thing, a lot of this is money. The claim is that the Freemasons inside the church direct church money towards certain groups and causes that support their agenda. Another part is information. The idea is that confidential church documents and secrets get passed to Masonic contacts outside of the church so that those outside forces always know what the Vatican is planning. But it goes beyond just the money and the secrets. The theory says that these hidden Masonic members worked to slowly change teachings in a way that makes the church less strict, less focused on, traditional authority, and more accepting of modern political systems. And it's not just, out of, their kindness, but it's basically to weaken the old structure and replace it with a new power structure that they can control, that the Masons can control. And then, of course, blackmail. The idea is that once someone is identified as part of this network, that person is protected from punishment, even if, they are caught doing something wrong or bad, because then, exposing that one person would completely expose the whole entire Vatican. The Lucifer Telescope. The Lucifer Telescope conspiracy is the claim that the Vatican is using a powerful telescope in Arizona to secretly study something in space that involves aliens and possibly a coming event that will change religion. Now, there is a large observatory in Arizona that the Vatican is connected to. And on that mountain, there is said to be a very advanced telescope system that is linked to the Vatican's research. Now, the conspiracy mainly focuses on the name Lucifer, because as we all know, Lucifer is the name connected to Satan, or the devil. So the claim is that the Vatican is not just casually looking at stars. The Vatican is tracking specific objects. The theory says that the telescope is being used to watch something approaching Earth. Some people describe it like a huge object, possibly a body in space, like a brown dwarf star or a hidden planet. Others say it is not a planet and it is something alive and something intelligent. So, that telescope isn't just for some normal, astronomy, it's surveillance. The theory also says that the Vatican already knows that extraterrestrial life exists and that this telescope, Lucifer, is a part of an effort to monitor non-human entities in space. The claim is that these entities are aware of us and may already be interacting, and the church is preparing for what happens when the public finds out. Now, the conspiracy also says that the church is planning for a future moment where religion has to be rewritten to include alien beings. The idea is that the church cannot get caught off guard by disclosure, so the Vatican is quietly studying whatever is coming, and they are naming it, researching it, and deciding how to control the story for the entire planet. The Hidden Tomb of Lucifer. Now, the Hidden Tomb of Lucifer conspiracy is the claim that somewhere underneath the Vatican, or maybe under another protected church site, there is a sealed underground chamber that holds the physical remains of a being identified as Lucifer. Now, like we literally just mentioned, and we all know, Lucifer is a fallen angel. He was an angel that was once a part of heaven, but he rebelled against God and was cast out. Now, most people connect Lucifer with Satan, which is of course the main enemy of God. And please, if I'm wrong about Lucifer and this whole entire story, please let me know, because I myself am not really that religious. So I'm not too sure, but from what I researched and from what I understand, that's, what they be saying. But anyway, the conspiracy treats Lucifer not only as a spiritual force, but as a real entity that had a physical form at some point, and that form was buried. Now, the story goes like this, okay? Thousands of years ago, after a war in heaven, Lucifer was defeated and captured. Now, instead of being destroyed, his body was contained. It was taken to Earth and locked in a heavily guarded tomb. The tomb was then placed in a location that would eventually become holy ground, so that humanity, would never dig it up by accident. Over time, secret religious orders were given the job of protecting it, and the theory says that Lucifer's body is not normal. It is still preserved, like not rotted at all or decomposed at all. Some versions describe Lucifer's body as a giant, humanoid with features that do not look fully human. The body is said to still give off energy, and anyone who gets near it feels sick, overwhelmed, or mentally attacked. The claim is that proof of this tomb would confirm that angels, demons, heaven, and hell are all physical realities, not just stories or symbols, and that revealing the tomb would trigger mass panic and break every major religious structure on Earth in one move. The Vatican and ancient pagan gods. Now, the Vatican and ancient pagan gods conspiracy is the claim that the Catholic Church did not erase older religions. It absorbed them and still secretly uses them. Now, pagan, in this context, is the old pre-Christian religions of Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, with gods like Jupiter, Isis, Apollo, and, so on and so forth. Now, the basic idea is that when the church grew, it did not fully destroy these older gods. It just kind of rebranded them. When Christianity spread through the Roman Empire, people already worshipped many gods. Now, instead of fighting every single local religion, the church is said to just have taken those gods and turned them into Christian-style figures. So instead of, a sun god, you get a saint connected to light. Instead of a goddess of motherhood, you get a holy mother figure. Now, on the surface, it looks like Christianity, but underneath it is is that same ancient worship. The theory says that the Vatican keeps rituals that happened, from before Christianity, and they still perform them in secret. These rituals are said to call on the power of old gods and use that power for influence, protection, and control. Now, another part of the theory focuses on statues and relics. Now, the claim is that deep inside the Vatican storage, there are actual idols from long-dead religions. For example, statues of Egyptian gods, statues of Roman gods, and carvings from temples that no longer exist. And the story is that these, are not kept for museum reasons. They are kept active, and they are still honored. Now, lastly, the theory says that the public message is one God, one church, but the private reality is that the church is managing an ancient spiritual system that is much older than Christianity and gets its strength from, many gods, not just one God. The Vatican and the New World Order. Now, the Vatican and the New World Order conspiracy is the idea that the Catholic Church is not just a religious power. It is a part of a plan to build a single world system. Now, the phrase New World Order is used to describe a future where there is, one global government, one financial network, and one approved belief system. Instead of having separate countries and different currencies and different religions, it would all just be put together into one. Now, the Vatican publicly looks like a spiritual authority, meaning it guides people on faith and morality. But the theory says that secretly, it is placed as one piece in a network with politicians, banking elites, military leaders, and high-level intelligence agencies. The shared goal is long-term control over, normal people like you and me. So per usual, let's start and talk with the money, okay? Now, the theory says that the Vatican is involved in shaping the coming global currency system. The plan is to move the world away from cash and independent national money and into a system where all money is digital, all money is watched, and all money can just be turned off like that, In that world, whoever controls that system controls survival. If you behave, you get access to money. If you resist, you are completely locked out of your bank account and have nothing. There's also the idea of a spiritual merger, and the claim is that the Vatican is working to blend religions, to slowly push a universal religion that sounds peaceful, tolerant, and modern, but quietly removes old rules and old identities and replaces them with loyalty to the New World structure itself. So instead of people saying, oh, I follow this faith and I follow this faith, the final goal is to have people saying, I follow the global order. And it doesn't just stop with, of course, faith and money. The conspiracy says that the Vatican helps smooth relationships between governments by acting as a trusted middle point. On the surface, it almost looks like, peacemaking, but underneath, it is about lining up world leaders under one coordinated plan so that later, when a single world authority is announced, it feels normal and already like it's in motion. The Vatican and mind control experiments. Now, the Vatican and mind control experiments conspiracy is the claim that the church was involved in secret psychological and neurological testing meant to control human thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Now, the idea is that behind closed doors, the Vatican worked with intelligence agencies and private labs to study how to break a person mentally and then how to rebuild that person into something more obedient. It's said that certain people were taken in private and put through extreme mental stress on purpose. This could mean sensory control, like locking someone in silent darkness for long periods, or blasting overwhelming sound and flashing light to overload the brain. Sensory control is important in this theory because it is said to weaken the mind's defenses and make it easier to insert commands, beliefs, or false memories. Another piece of this theory is religious conditioning. The claim is that the victims were constantly told that the orders that they were given were not coming from humans, but from spiritual authority. So the subject is pushed to trust the command because it is supposedly holy. This creates what the conspiracy calls spiritual leverage. And that means just, controlling someone by convincing them that disobedience is not just disobedience to a person, but it is direct disobedience to God. The theory also says that the Vatican was especially focused on children and young teens because a young brain is easier to shape. These children would then grow up and be placed in politics, finance, media, and even inside of the church itself. So you don't just control one person. You plant long-term assets in positions of influence. The claim is that mind control was not just about, random torture. It was about building human tools, shaping future decision makers, and creating loyal agents who do not even realize that they were being engineered. Double agents among cardinals. Now, the double agents among cardinals conspiracy is the idea that some high-ranking members of the Catholic Church are secretly working for outside powers and feeding those outside powers information from inside of the Vatican. Now, if you don't know, a cardinal is one of the top officials in the church. Cardinals help run major parts of the church. They advise the Pope, and they are the ones who, vote on who becomes the next Pope. So a cardinal is not just, a religious figure. A cardinal is basically someone in the inner circle. The theory says that some of those men are not loyal to the church first, is that they are loyal to governments, spy networks, and private groups that want control of the church. The theory says that a foreign government targets a certain cardinal. That cardinal is offered things like money, protection, influence, or help getting promoted in exchange for, access. For example, this kind of double agent would secretly pass on information about Vatican money, planned statements, internal fights, and future moves of the Pope. The information gives outside groups a way to plan around and even steer church decisions. And the conspiracy doesn't just stop at spying. It also includes sabotage. The claim is that double agents work from inside to block certain people from ever becoming Pope and, to push other people forward. That way, the outside group basically rigs the future of the church before the public even knew that there was a chance. The Vatican's role in global depopulation agendas. This conspiracy is the claim that the Catholic Church is secretly a part of a long game plan to reduce the number of people on Earth and shape who is allowed to exist in the future. Now, the basic idea is that powerful groups want a smaller, more controlled human population. The theory says that the Vatican is not just aware of this plan, but it is involved in coordinating it. They aren't, coordinating it in public sermons, but they are doing it in private meetings with world leaders, with health organizations, with banks, and even with powerful families. The theory says that the Vatican quietly supports programs that limit birth in certain parts of the world. And this isn't just like regular family planning. It's a large-scale pressure to make sure that fewer children are born into certain groups, certain, cultures, and even certain countries. The claim is that behind closed doors, church officials help shape which areas get targeted and which areas are protected. So it's not about just lowering all numbers equally. It is about controlling which future populations will have the most influence. And the theory argues that the plan is not just about people, that it is about land and water and food. The idea is that if you reduce the number of people in certain regions, you can then take that land and those resources, later with less resistance. It's strategic. It is used to clear the map and make room for global control of natural resources. Now, the theory also says that the Vatican covers this agenda by wrapping it in moral language. The church presents itself as caring for the, planet and caring for stability and caring for the future of humanity, but they are then privately helping pick who gets a future and then who doesn't get a future. It's almost like population management dressed up as humanitarian guidance. So the conspiracy describes the Vatican as part planner, part messenger, and part moral cover for a controlled, smaller, engineered human race. The Vatican and artificial intelligence. Now, this conspiracy is the claim that the Catholic Church is not just talking about AI in a moral way. It is secretly helping build a global religious AI that will guide and control human behavior. The theory says that the Vatican is working with tech companies, private defense labs, and intelligence agencies to build an AI system that will act like a digital spiritual authority. So instead of a person answering questions like, what is right, what is wrong, what should I do, the system itself will answer, and those answers will be treated like the truth. Now, the theory says that the Vatican has access to one of the largest moral and psychological data sets in the world. This includes, confession records, behavior patterns, and moral questions asked by millions of people over time. The claim is that all of this gets turned into training material, which means raw input used to teach an AI how to understand people and how to influence them. The AI is then trained to track and predict how people will act. And this isn't, just in general, but, at a level of individuals and communities and countries. So the system can flag who is drifting, who is loyal, who is angry, who is unstable, who might resist, who might obey, all of that sorts of stuff. And then the idea is that the AI will start giving advice, not only on spiritual questions, but on political choices, social topics, and lifestyle rules. And people will be encouraged to treat that guidance as morally correct, almost like hearing the voice of a higher power. The conspiracy says that the Vatican is creating a digital shepherd, a tool that knows you deeply, watches you constantly, and corrects you in real time. The Vatican's pact with the devil. The Vatican's pact with the devil conspiracy is the claim that a long time ago, high-level church leaders made an agreement with a demonic force so that the church could gain and keep power on earth. According to this theory, the Catholic Church is presented as not just a religion, but as an empire that survives for centuries. The theory says that that level of survival did not just happen, only by politics and money. It happened because a deal was made with something that wasn't human. And that other side of the deal is described as, the devil or Satan or a ruling demonic presence. The church is then promised protection and influence, and in return, the Vatican is required to do certain things on earth. Things like covering up evil inside the church, allowing dark rituals to happen in certain protected spaces, and quietly guiding humanity towards spiritual confusion. Now, these dark rituals or ceremonies are meant to open a channel to a non-human force and give it legal permission to act. The idea is that some of these rituals were done inside holy sites, which twists the energy of that place and claims it to the other side. The dark side. There's also the claim that the pact was renewed across generations, so it was not signed one time in the past and forgotten about, is that it is said, to still be updated by certain popes and certain cardinals in private to keep the protection active. Basically, just like a written contract, like if an MLB player signs a contract, then they have to renew the contract after a certain amount of years. It's basically, this theory is saying the exact same thing is happening between the church and the devil or Satan or whoever it may be. Now, the church shows light in public, but the power behind it is darkness. So the authority of the church in this theory does not come from God. It comes from an ongoing agreement with the enemy of God, and that's why it cannot be challenged by normal human forces. The Vatican's role in the assassination of JFK. Now, this theory claims that the Catholic Church helped arrange the killing of President John F. Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963 in Dallas, Texas, in order to protect its own power. Now, if you didn't know, John F. Kennedy was the first Catholic president of the United States. Now, on the surface, that sounds like something that the church would be proud of, having the first Catholic president in the office. But the conspiracy flips that, and it says that JFK had started pushing plans that would threaten money networks, intelligence networks, and foreign influence networks that the Vatican was connected to. So instead of being an ally, JFK became a problem. It's said that JFK wanted to go after hidden financial systems that moved money quietly between governments, banks, and religious institutions. And the claim is that some of that money flow involved the Vatican Bank. The idea is that Kennedy was getting too close to these hidden channels, and that made him dangerous. And then, of course, there's the Cold War also. The theory says that the Vatican was not just sitting on the sidelines, that it was deeply involved in anti-communist strategy in Europe and Latin America. The claim is that Kennedy was not fully cooperating with that plan and was reaching his own private paths with certain world leaders, so he became almost unpredictable to the Vatican. And then, of course, here comes the assassination. The conspiracy says that the Vatican did not act alone, that it, worked through connected contacts in organized crime and through certain people in American intelligence and through anti-Castro Cuban circles who already wanted Kennedy gone. The story is that these separate groups all had their own reasons to remove Kennedy, and, the Vatican acted as a quiet coordinator behind the scenes. This conspiracy treats the assassination of JFK as a coordinated strike to protect high-level financial and geopolitical control, with the church involved at the planning level, not just watching from the outside. The Vatican missions to Egypt. The Vatican missions to Egypt conspiracy is the idea that the Vatican secretly sends teams into Egypt to recover ancient knowledge that could rewrite human history and religious history, and then they keep all of that information just hidden. Egypt in this theory has seen more than just pyramids and tombs. Egypt is described as the storage site of pre-flood knowledge. The claim is that deep under certain temples and under the Sphinx, there are chambers that hold records, maps, devices, and texts from a time when humanity was way more advanced than we were told. So the conspiracy says that the Vatican has known about this for a long time, and it quietly sends priests, translators, and in some cases, even private security into Egypt under the cover of archaeology. The job is not to put discoveries in museums. The job is to take anything that threatens the official timeline and move it into Vatican control. Now, one important part of this theory is about Jesus. Now, the theory says that Egypt holds documents about Jesus's missing years, the years between childhood and his public teaching. Some versions say that these texts claim that Jesus studied in secret Egyptian mystery schools. And by mystery school, I guess I just mean a hidden training group that taught higher spiritual power. They also taught healing techniques, and they also taught how to control reality through spoken vibration. The idea is that if this material got out, it would show the real roots of Christianity are tied to older Egyptian systems, and not only to Jerusalem and Rome. Now, another part, of course, is the technology. The claim is that under certain pyramid sites that there are objects that are not just religious, but mechanical and possibly even energy related, and that Vatican missions are sent to remove these items before any government or public team can scan them, photograph them, or publish them. So this conspiracy paints Egypt like a vault of forbidden origin stories and the Vatican like a quiet retrieval crew that keeps those origins contained. The disappearance of Vatican whistleblowers. The disappearance of Vatican whistleblowers conspiracy is the idea that people inside the Catholic Church who try to expose secrets or threaten to leak damaging information about the Vatican quietly vanish. Now, a whistleblower is, of course, someone on the inside of an organization who plans to reveal what that organization is doing in secret. In this case, this could mean a priest, a nun, an assistant, a banker, a translator, a security worker. It's just someone, you could just be someone inside of the Vatican's inner circle. The conspiracy says that once a person is identified as a threat, they are handled before they can talk. So a whistleblower inside of the Vatican could get access to something serious. You know, that could be files involving hidden money, contracts with criminal groups, evidence of supernatural findings locked in the archives, connections to political deaths, and even things that would harm the public image of the church. That person either starts talking to journalists or other governments, or they hint that they are going to release documents. And then suddenly that person or that whistleblower is just completely gone. The theory says that it almost never looks like a dramatic kidnapping, and it looks clean. You know, it looks like transfer, meaning the person is said to have suddenly been reassigned somewhere else, you know, super far away. Or it looks like burnout, you know, meaning that the person is said to have quit for personal reasons. In some versions, the person is said to have had a health emergency and then again is just never seen again in the public. They're gone, they're erased, get them out of here. There's also the idea of controlled isolation. Now, the conspiracy says that certain whistleblowers are removed from normal life and placed in church-owned properties. And these properties aren't always inside of Vatican City, but in private religious buildings around the world. These buildings are described like safe houses, except they are only safe for the church and not for the person or the whistleblower that's inside of these properties. Now, the disappearances are meant to send a message without leaving proof. And the message, I mean, is pretty simple. No matter what level you are, if you try to expose what sits under the surface of the Vatican, you do not get a second chance. You're gone. You're donezo. Reptilian influence in the Vatican. This conspiracy says that the top level of the Catholic Church is either controlled by or directly made up of non-human reptilian beings pretending to be human. The theory describes these reptilians as shape-shifting entities, meaning that they can appear human and blend in with society, but underneath they are something else. Something scaled, something cold-blooded, and something older than human civilization. The claim is that these reptilian beings are not random. They are a part of a ruling species that has been on Earth for thousands of years, and they guide governments and banking systems and even religion. The Vatican is said to be one of the main headquarters for them, so the church is not only a religious center, it is a control node. Now, the theory also says that certain high-ranking church figures are not fully human, and that these beings use the church for three main reasons. And the first is access. The Vatican has access to global leaders, to presidents, to kings, to CEOs, to intelligence agencies and military commanders. So basically, if you control the Vatican, you get a line into all of those people. Second is energy. The theory says that reptilians feed on spiritual energy, and the idea is that, you know, large-scale religious systems generate those emotions in huge amounts, and then that energy can then be harvested by the lizard people. And then third is the secrecy. I mean, obviously, as we've been talking about this whole video, the Vatican has private archives, they have private tunnels, they have private security, they have private laws, they even have private wealth. And that makes it the perfect place to hide non-human activity in plain sight. Then there's also the breeding claim. The theory says that some bloodlines inside of the church leadership were carefully managed to allow reptilian DNA to mix with human DNA without it being too obvious. You know, so certain people at the top can look human, they can act human, they can speak like normal humans, but they are considered vessels, which means bodies being used by reptilian intelligence. This conspiracy does not treat the Vatican like a normal institution. It treats it like an alien fortress wearing religious clothing. The Secret of Enoch. Now, the Secret of Enoch conspiracy is the claim that ancient writings connected to Enoch hold the real story of what happened between humans and non-human beings in early Earth, and that this information is being kept quiet because it changes the entire origin story of humanity, religion, and also authority. Now, in old religious texts, Enoch is described as a human who did not die in a normal way. Instead, he was taken up into the heavens and shown hidden knowledge by powerful beings. The story is that he was allowed to see how reality actually works, including the structure of the universe, the laws of creation, the future of Earth, and the true identity of the beings that interacted with humanity. Enoch is said to have written detailed records of what he saw. These records describe angels in a physical way, almost like advanced beings who came down, landed on Earth, contacted humans, and even bred with humans. The result of that connection was giants, described as violent, highly intelligent hybrids. The Secret of Enoch theory says that these beings taught humans information that was not supposed to be given yet. Things like weapon making, occult energy practices, and genetic manipulation. So this is not just basic, religion we're talking. This is a technical knowledge. It's said that Enoch is told that Earth will be hit with a great wipeout event because of the corruption between humans and these beings. And Enoch is warned that this is a repeating pattern and not a one-time event, meaning that this intervention from advanced beings happens in cycles, and it always ends in a global reset. The claim is that high-level religious systems removed the full Enoch story from normal teaching and locked it away, because it shows that humanity was shaped and managed by outside intelligences, and not by human governments, and not by kings, and not by churches. Mysterious disappearances in Vatican City. The mysterious disappearances in Vatican City conspiracy is the idea that people who live or work inside Vatican territory sometimes just vanish, and that those vanishings are not just a random crime, is that they are a part of something organized and protected. Now, if you didn't already know, Vatican City is tiny. I mean, it's less than a square mile, but it is heavily watched, it is full of security, cameras, Swiss guards, and controlled entrances. Now, the theory says that because it is so controlled, nobody just casually goes missing there. If someone disappears, it means that someone with power allowed it, and they've removed that person through restricted areas, underground routes, or even sealed buildings. So you're probably asking now, who in Vatican City is disappearing? Well, the story focuses on young staff, on assistants, on secretaries, and students linked to church officials, and sometimes even outsiders who were brought in for work, translation, or even music training, and then those people never left. The idea is that these people either knew something that they shouldn't have, or they were being used for something behind the scenes, and then they were removed to protect reputations. One part of the theory says that the Vatican has access to safe houses on church-owned property in Italy and in other countries. So a missing person from Vatican City can be moved across the border in an unmarked car and then kept somewhere private for years. The story for that person could be, anything. For example, they could say that that person left voluntarily, that that person ran away, that they had personal issues, or they joined a mission far, 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 far away. The claim is that some of those disappearances are connected to hidden spiritual practices inside of elite church circles. These people are taken because they were involved in something that they can never become public, and the only way to make sure that it never becomes public is to erase the person who could make it public. The theory says that Vatican City is not just holy ground, it is a closed ecosystem, and once you go in, if the wrong people decide that you are theirs, you do not just get to walk back into your normal life. You are now stuck in this life. The Vatican and the Nephilim. So this conspiracy is the claim that the Catholic Church has direct evidence that the Nephilim were real and is hiding physical proof of them in underground vaults. Now, the Nephilim in ancient texts are described as giant hybrid beings. The story is that fallen angels came down to earth, had children with human women, and those children were the Nephilim. These beings were not normal humans. They were described as extremely tall, extremely powerful, and most importantly, extremely violent, and that they ruled over early humanity like living gods. The theory says that the Vatican has known for a long time that giant skeletons, giant skulls, and tablets describing Nephilim rule have been found in different parts of the world, and that the church either helped recover those remains or took control of them once they were discovered. So instead of those bones going to public museums, they were quietly taken and locked away in the Vatican archives. The claim is that the Nephilim are not just random monsters, that they are the reason for the old stories about gods walking among humans, and ancient kings who were described as more than human, and ancient bloodlines that ruled because they were said that they were chosen by the sky. The conspiracy links this to the idea that before the Great Flood, the world had an advanced civilization led by these hybrids, and that this civilization was wiped out and, basically wiped out to reset Earth. Now, another part of this theory says that the Vatican is not just storing bones. It is keeping written records that explain what the Nephilim were doing on Earth. These records supposedly talk about genetic mixing, forced human breeding, early forms of mind control, and advanced weapon knowledge given to humans. And the final piece is that the Nephilim bloodline never fully ended. Certain elites are said to carry a small amount of that blood, meaning that they are descendants of these hybrids, and that the Vatican both tracks that lineage and protects it in secret, to prepare for a future return of that ancient order. The Vatican and the Book of the Dead. Now, the Vatican and the Book of the Dead conspiracy is the claim that the Vatican secretly holds original versions of Egyptian afterlife texts that are way older and way darker than anything shown to the public, and that those texts are still being studied and used. Now, the Egyptian Book of the Dead is a group of writings placed in tombs to guide a dead person through the afterlife. It teaches the soul how to get past dangers, how to talk to gods, and how to avoid being erased. The conspiracy takes this further. It says that the real, early versions of these texts are not just prayers. They are instructions, like a manual for controlling spirits, summoning entities, and moving consciousness from body to body. Now, the claim is that the earliest versions of the Book of the Dead explain how to pull consciousness out of a dying body and anchor it into another living body. So basically a way to keep certain powerful people alive through transfer, not through a normal lifespan. The theory says that this process is ritual-based and requires specific spoken phrases, timing, and symbols, and that the Vatican has copies of those instructions. Now, another part of this theory is weaponization. It's said that the Vatican collected these documents in secret missions to Egypt and other North African burial sites and then never returned them, because the texts can also be used to bind and command non-physical beings. And this isn't about, helping the dead, it's about using the dead. And lastly, the conspiracy claims that high-ranking church groups still practice certain versions of those rituals, not to save normal people, but to extend the influence of their own inner circle and to keep spiritual control over places that the church considers important. The Vatican's experiments with the Chronovisor. Now, the Vatican's experiments with the Chronovisor conspiracy is the claim that the church secretly had a working device that could see through time, and that this device was used to watch real historical events and possibly even glimpse the future. Now, the Chronovisor basically means it's a time viewer. It's not like a time machine that moves you. It's a machine that lets you look at a different moment in history the way that you would watch a live broadcast or even like a movie or a TV show. The idea is that the Chronovisor could lock onto an event, pull its energy signal, and then display it as audio and video. So like if I wanted to see the assassination of JFK, I wouldn't travel back in time and be there in Dallas and watch him. It would basically like pull up all of the energy on a TV or whatever, or a screen or whatever they're using, and it would show the event basically. But it's said that a small group of Vatican insiders working with scientists and engineers built this Chronovisor in secret. Every event in time gives off a kind of frequency, and the machine could supposedly capture those leftover signals from the past and reconstruct the scene. So what you are seeing is not a reenactment. You are seeing the moment itself just replayed. Now, the major claim is that the Vatican used the Chronovisor to view key religious moments, including the crucifixion of Jesus, private meetings between early church leaders, and the lives of saints. Go Saints, baby! The idea is that this allowed the church to confirm details that no one else could ever prove. Another part of this conspiracy says that the Chronovisor was also pointed forward, meaning that it could be aimed at the future. Future visions reportedly showed wars, assassinations, natural disasters, and the collapse of certain governments and systems. That kind of information would be priceless because it would let the Vatican plan ahead, prepare, and even guide world leaders by warning them or pushing them. Now, lastly, the theory says that the Chronovisor was too dangerous to keep active, so the device was taken apart, its pieces were hidden, and its blueprints were locked in the Vatican archives. And it's now guarded at the highest level, so the ability to view time stayed in the hands of the church alone. The Vatican and the Bloodline of Christ. The Vatican and the Bloodline of Christ conspiracy is the idea that Jesus Christ did not die without descendants, but actually he had a family line, and that his bloodline continued through history in secret, and that the Vatican knows exactly who those descendants are. Now, Jesus had a close relationship with Mary Magdalene, who is described as one of his most trusted followers. Now, the theory says that this relationship was not only spiritual, that it was personal, and that they were connected as partners. From that, the claim is that Mary Magdalene carried his bloodline, meaning she had his child or even children, and that those children survived after Jesus was gone. The idea is that after the death of Jesus, certain early church leaders realized that if the public knew his bloodline existed, that family would have more natural authority than the church itself. So to prevent challenges, the church supposedly erased all public records of that bloodline and turned Mary Magdalene into a less powerful figure in the official story. The next part of the conspiracy says that Mary Magdalene and possibly the child or children were secretly taken out of the main region and moved towards areas like Southern Europe. From there, the bloodline mixed with noble families. And over a century, this line became tied to certain royal houses. The theory says that some of Europe's most powerful families are not just royal by politics, they are royal by blood, meaning they carry what is described as sacred DNA. The claim is that certain people walking around today carry direct DNA from Jesus, and the Vatican not only has records of this, but they track it. And they track it quietly. You know, it's kind of like a map of a royal family tree that they just update through time and don't let anybody know, basically. So the conspiracy says that if this bloodline ever made a public claim, that claim could break the church. So the Vatican's role is to protect the secret and also keep those descendants protected, watched, and controlled. Alrighty, y'all. Well, those have been 25 of some of the darkest conspiracy theories tied to the Vatican. Now, please, if I got any information about religion or any of the, official religious stories or anything like that, please let me know, because like I said, I'm not a super religious person. I haven't really studied religion that much in my whole entire life. I didn't grow up religious or anything. So I'm kind of just relying on what the internet tells me. So I could be wrong about some things. So if I am, please let me know down in the comments below. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of some of these theories. If you think that some of them could have some truth in them, if you think some of them are just so outlandish, let me know in the comments below. I truly do read every single comment, even if I don't, reply or give you a heart. I try to, but I do read every single comment. So yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts. I could make a part 2 to this if you guys enjoyed this. I researched so many other theories that I didn't include in this video that I have, locked away in a secret Vatican vault that I can pull from and make another video. So if you guys want to see another video on this topic, I can make another one. But yeah, anyways, if you guys did enjoy, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe with those post notifications on. And without further ado, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. As always, stay safe. See you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bye.